This is a CW Spiral, a podcast run by two Barchies and a Bughead. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network, the latest news, and in-depth spoiler-filled discussions of some of our favorite shows on the CW. Happy Halloween! Or at least it will be when this pod episode drops. I'm excited, not excited for CW's Halloween lineup because they basically don't have anything, but excited for Spooky Day.
It's gonna get real spooky in a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I hate that we're starting the news section with some terrible news, horrific news anyway. But it's Nancy Drew has been final seasoned for season 4, which I guess essentially is a cancellation since they were filming it.
Yeah.
It's sad.
It's very sad. I don't even know where to begin. Michael, you always have the intelligent thought. What is it?
My analysis is very biased today. How do you even comprehend that? Here we are again. We thought we'd make it out of this year with at least no cancellations, or if there was a cancellation, you'd think it was from one of the shows on the air at the moment. What went into this decision? Where did it come from? You're right. It feels very much like a cancellation, even though it's a final season. If Nancy had been renewed for a final season back in March, you would have been like, yay, one more for Nancy. But now it kind of feels like it's been cut short, even if the story tells us this was the original plan all along. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to repeat the old tired phrase at this stage that Nancy deserved better, but that's what this year has been all about.
Yeah, it's really weird because if it was always going to be final season, then they could have said that when it was early renewed. Instead of having the fans and I guess the actors going through into the season 4 filming thinking that there was a possibility for more, and they were like, no, it's not a possibility for more. We're ending. It's just it was a strange way to go about a show that you were going to final season anyway.
And it stresses me out because according to Deadline, the discussions about this being the final season have been going on for quote months, and apparently the decision was made before Mark left the CW. So I'm like, how long was the show in limbo and we didn't know and the cast didn't know? I think what I want from the CW in this new era is more transparency, because no reasoning was provided, and I think a reason or something is really helpful to fans. Whether it's while we were writing, we found this is a great ending point for this story. Great. Tell us that. If it was just a business decision, we won't understand, but tell us. You can't tell us it's ratings because the season hasn't premiered yet. And obviously the ratings were good enough to elicit a 4th season renewal, but just tell us. Give us a reason. Give the fans something to kind of understand why this happened, because if you're telling us that it's been in the works for months, that doesn't track with what we know to be true, and it doesn't make sense. And right now in this era with things being canceled and we don't know what's going on, getting essentially a cancellation in the middle of production of a show that the fans are so excited about. They were so thrilled that it got renewed in the first place during an absolute bloodbath. Why was it in talks for months? And it was, I don't know. And Deadline also said that it's not unexpected. To whom?
Right. I remember the celebrations after it was renewed, because obviously the fans were so happy about it. And I mean, if the fans were so passionate about making it happen, and they were like, they did it. So I feel like the silver lining here could be that maybe Mark was the one that saw it getting a final season, because he's always been very vocal about how he loves his shows getting final seasons. And he would have done the same with Batwoman and Legends, that Warner Brothers not prevented them from doing so. Maybe this is what that looked like. Maybe this is what that would have been. He got it with Nancy Drew, maybe he oversaw this. I just don't like the fact that, as Reed said, there wasn't an awful lot of transparency about it. So the cast may have started filming this season as though it was just any other old season. But did the creative team know? Did the writers know? Did the producers know? Or was this just it's been in the works by the top down who are not involved in the scripts? Because I know the Deadline article did say that they're crafting a final season. And as that crafting a final season like Dynasty had to do, where they had 6 episodes to work with to get that end game? Or is it that they've been crafting it from the very beginning, kind of like Supergirl did back in the good old days of the CW? It just, again, I think transparency is a great word, because it just feels like it came out of nowhere, and yet the article's telling us that it didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this is a dynasty situation where we're going to, in the back half of season 4 of Nancy Drew, start beginning to lay the flowers down. It's very weird for them to be like, oh, we're crafting. It's like, okay, but y'all were dropping little nice hints through in the early parts of filming, which there wasn't anything to suggest they were heading towards a final season by what had like the little nuggets that they'd been dropping for months. Again, this is like if it's a month-long talk, shouldn't it feel like a month-long talk? Shouldn't we have already like begun sort of slowly getting the fandom and everyone ready for the show to go off without actually saying the show is going to go off? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. The only thing I could think of as far as a reason, which they probably will not tell us, is that they need to start making room on the roster for their new shows if they're going to be introducing new titles, because CW has always, well, not always, but it's had a veteran lineup for a while now, which is why there was such a bloodbath this year. I want to say last year, but we're not even done with the year yet, and we're still canceling things. And technically, so that means that Riverdale is final season in 2023. So is The Flash, and now Nancy Drew. That's 3 shows. That's 3 slots that they have to fill with content, whether it's scripted or unscripted.
And we're still not even out of the woods. Like, who knows what could still happen. I will say, this does kind of feel like a silver lining for the Winchesters and Walker Independents, as horrible as that is to say. Because as soon as I heard the news, I was like, well, I guess the Winchesters and Walker Independents are getting renewed. I don't know. But what I was going to circle back to something. The crafting the final season bit. I feel like that was lip service. And I think you're right that we're going to get it in the back half. I think that was like just to appease fans. I think that comes from the network. Like, oh, they're crafting a series finale that'll work. And I'm like, great. But like, have they known that from the beginning, like you said? I just hate that the cast found out like a few hours before we did.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's good that they found out before we did, though, and weren't like cast members for shows where you find out they found out with you. And I'm just like, how rude do you have to be to not at least tell the cast before the news drops?
Yeah, it feels like the thing that gets me the most is that a lot of this feels very last minute, and the reports are telling us that it wasn't. So like, what kind of, again, to use that word, transparency does that suggest for going forward? Like, are we just going to be blindsided by this consistently? Because like 3 final seasons is a huge thing. Great for the shows. They get to bow out with the respect they deserve, or at least a modicum of that respect, if in Nancy Drew case, because we don't know how much time they had to plan the final season. But like 3 final seasons when you've only, 9, 10, 11 shows, and we don't know if all of them will get renewed or cancelled or whatever. Does that mean cancellations can still come? Like, I know we're moving into a new era, and that's probably going to be the tagline for the CW for the next 4 or 5 years, but like, it can't happen overnight. They can't like just clear their decks. And yes, cheaper programming is an important thing. Next Star Originals is an important thing, but you need to have returnees to the network to keep it alive. And Nancy Drew might not have brought in the biggest audience. Riverdale was bringing in a smallest audience right now, but those shows were guaranteeing that at least people who watched the CW for years were coming back to watch it, maybe see trailers for new shows and then watch those new shows. And then, of course, The Flash is one of the biggest audiences on the CW. To lose all of that in one fell swoop, and we haven't even entered the cancellations period yet, it's quite scary. Some might call it stupid, but I do understand why The Flash at Riverdale are ending. I still feel like Nancy might have had some life left in it.
Yeah, so it's a weird time for the network. We keep saying that. I feel like every time we are happy with what's happening on the CW, we end up on
just
another
like
pod.
Comfortable, or like we just like
don't get comfy.
No. Ariana Grande, stay woke, don't sleep.
Oh my God. No, that's very true. That's very true. But before we move on, though, I guess we should list the Suffragettes series is in the works. Jake Chang is in the works, which that's a reverse. That's a Riverdale-esque show in the sense that it takes place in the Archie Comics universe, and it's a mystery. So there is that. We'll get mysteries again if the show goes forward with the season order. And the Zorro, which is still in limbo. So that's 3 shows right there. And they haven't announced any unscripted programming that's in development. I don't really want to see any of the unscripted things that they might have like cooking in the pots. They can keep that. But there are shows coming. I just wish they would.
And Just As You, of course, hopefully. Like everything sounds positive. Every update like that sounds surprisingly positive. And I feel like we're talking about returnees. That's probably the biggest one off the new shows that might get people interested again. So right now it feels like we need Just As You, but I don't know what the next year is going to look like. I just hope that a slew of cancellations don't follow 3 final seasons.
I know. I do think Just As You is going to take the Flash's spot, though. But we'll see.
I hope so.
One last note about Nancy.
Ooh,
real quick.
yes.
In the Deadline article, I know we probably should take these things with a grain of salt, but I did think it was really interesting that there was no mention of CBS television having an intention of shopping it around. Usually they will mention those things up front in some kind of press release when something gets canceled, but it was not mentioned. So it does seem like there's some finality to this decision. But I know that's not gonna stop the Drew crew from, getting out there and making sure people know Nancy's name, which go off and do your thing. Just wanted to put that out there, that was something that I took note of in all of this mess.
Yes. Well, then I'm going to posit a Nancy Drew movie, CW Mole. If we're losing her, give us a season theme, like a Halloween, I don't know, for next year.
Maybe like a spooky Christmas.
Yes, that would be fun.
I don't know if they ever did that in the show, but spooky Christmas will be fun.
Spooky Christmas would be fun. So take it back to the Mole. Like, we're not done with Nancy. Like, they might be done with Nancy as far as season shows, but give us a TV movie. It'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of last bows, so there's Flash news. Jon Cor, who plays Chillblaine, has been promoted to series regular. Good for him. However, I don't quite know what this means for Chillblaine's character, considering we have 15 episodes, right? So I kind of want to not have another one.
From what I saw, the buzz was not good.
Yeah, I do want to just lead with, just like Sabrina said, very happy for Jon Cor, great actor, really enjoy his presence on the show. But it's a bit of a baffling decision because the show is struggling with its newer characters as is. Do we really need another one? I will say I found some of Chillblaine's arc more exciting than some of the other regular characters we have on the show. So maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But yeah, it's baffling. The more we learn about the final season, it feels like, oh my goodness, I'm so excited about that. And wait, why did they do that? It feels like maybe they're trying to do too much all at once. I mean, it makes sense. We have this new Killer Frost, Caitlin, whatever that thing is that stepped out of the fridge at the end, entity to look into, and I assume Chillblaine will be involved in that arc since he was in love with Frost. But yeah, it feels like it's going to be less about Frost, more about turning him into a hero, which I mean, they've kind of already did. Do we need to spend the final season doing it again? I don't know. I like him and I'm glad we're going to see him in the final season, but I don't think he needs to be a series regular character. But again, I'm very happy for Jon Cor. The season has so many conflicting feelings and it hasn't even started yet.
I know. And I feel like that's going to end up being a whole separate arc from everybody else, which means that we could have another, like a season where half the story, like 2 storylines are competing with one another, and we do not have time for it. We just don't have time.
I feel like they need to tighten it up and get, like, this is the same show that said they may not be able to tie up Legends or they may not be able to bring back Mia Smoke. And I do respect that because this is the final season of The Flash. Yes, it's the final Arrowverse season, but it is the final season of The Flash. But we also need to think about what stories we don't need to be telling in 13 episodes. And I'm not sure, well, the extent of this one is one of them. Happy to see Chillblaine, happy to see whatever that thing is that walked out of the fridge, but tighten it up a little bit. I don't know. I feel like we won't be able to judge fully until we say, but previous seasons have not been kind when we know that the show has too big of a cast.
And you said 13 episodes, not even 15. I gave them 2 extra. So we don't even have...
The original report said 15, I think, but I think when it was confirmed, it was pulled down to 13. You're making me question that, but I'm pretty sure it was 13.
Oh my God. Well, if it's 13, no. I mean, happy for Jon Cor, but my goodness. But there is exciting Flash news, though. And that is that Javicia Leslie is returning to the Arrowverse, though not as Batwoman. There's a mystery role that she's filling.
Yeah, it's very exciting to see Javicia Leslie back. Like, as soon as I seen that news, I was like, yes, Batwoman's back. And it was very, like, of all the things, this was unexpected because Batwoman was actually one of the parts of the Arrowverse that did tie up nicely. Not exactly series finale level, but definitely finale level. So to see her back on the show was great. Of course, there's the whole, who is she playing? And I mean, allegedly, she's playing the DC character, the Red Death. And now I'm telling you, I spent my early 20s writing about villains that the Flash should have, and the Red Death was at the top of that list. For anyone unaware, it's an evil version of Batman from a parallel dimension that straps the Flash to the Batmobile and steals his speed by driving through something or other. It was very crazy.
Wow.
But obviously this show has decided to adapt it with Batwoman instead. If that's the case, and all I can say is that sounds incredible. At the top of this list, I'm very happy to see Javicia Leslie back, but I'm also really excited that if this is the case, that they're finally adapting the Red Death. Never thought it would happen. They did name drop him in season 6. Didn't expect, or now I guess we should say they did name drop her in season 6. Never expected them to actually go in that direction. Again, is this going to be a standalone episode then? Is this going to play into the main villain of the season? How many episodes do we have to play with? We have to take all of that into account, but I will say I'm going to be a little bit biased and say I'm just very excited to see Javicia Leslie back, and that's so exciting.
It's very exciting. I don't know how I feel about an arc. I think they could do a really good episode or two. I wouldn't mind if it was sort of this own little thing, and then we kind of moved on to the rest of the season just to give them time to play and have fun. I don't trust them with an arc. So 2 episodes tops personally for me, but it sounds like that already sounds like it's going to be amazing.
It does. The best thing I can think of is that if they do something like Arrow's final season, where it was tied to the Crisis storyline, but each episode had a standalone flavor. They never went with this big arc. I think if the Flash did something like that for its final season, that could be really cool, because the show used to thrive on standalone episodes, and we've seen in recent seasons their long drawn out arcs are not paying the show any favors. So maybe have an overarching arc, but every single episode has its own standalone quality. It worked beautifully for Arrow's final season, brought the show back from the brink. It would be cool if it did the same for the Flash. And it's starting to sound quite episodic with all the strange things we're learning about that's happening in the season. So yeah, if they do that, I think they could have an amazing episode in there with Javicia Leslie, Ryan Wilder, Batwoman, whatever character this is. I'm so excited to see her back.
Yes. And unlike everybody else, well, besides Riverdale and Nancy, they don't have to worry about ratings. So they can do whatever they want.
Throw everything at the wall, just make it coherent.
Yes, because as everyone who listens now knows, we're doing the ratings game, and it's hard out here for the CW. Though they are somewhat bouncing back. I mean, so the week ending on October 21st, it's better. It's better. Once people are bouncing back. Walker's at 0.69 million, and Walker Independence was 0.51, which means they're steady. Pretty much. Walker could be better, but considering where they are, and they're getting a lot of preemptions too for football, and so there are a lot of delayed viewings coming in. I think people should give them a pass for how the ratings are going right now. No one should be crowing in the tweets. It is what, especially because the Winchesters had to bounce back hard after having that slip in episode 2, which they did. Episode 2 had 0.46 million, and episode 3 got 0.55 million. I can't read numbers. We're just going to say 550,000. We're just going to say it in the thousands because I can't read these numbers. But they got 550,000, which is good considering they had slipped so far down. We're doing a slow crawl up back to the 700. Plus you have the +3 and +7 numbers that always sort of bring everyone back up. So that's good.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It's interesting because the ratings last week could be attributed to perhaps the Verizon issue that's ongoing, that's robbing people of the chance to watch on the TV. But clearly that made some more fans come out, and maybe in other areas, I don't know. But there is a stark contrast from the huge ratings drop last week that affected everything bar Walker and Stargirl. Stargirl, my queen, standing strong. But now here we are this week and things are looking quite better. So, I mean, like, hopefully this is a good sign and the Verizon issue won't, I hope long term that that's tied up because people deserve to be able to watch their favorite shows. But it does feel like the network is starting to bounce back from a very unusual second fall week. And I hope it continues because things are looking up, particularly for the Winchesters, which had a pretty standard drop-off rate this week, which was actually an improvement from last week. This is what the week 2 stats should have looked like. So hopefully we're back in the right place now.
And the All-Americans had a shocking decline in their second week.
Mm-hmm.
And then they bounced back pretty intensely, which is good to see because it was kind of worrisome. It was like, how did that happen?
Yeah,
and I know it was the Verizon thing, and like, I don't know, there's a mess of sports happening, but it was just like, what?
I know All-American fared better than All-American Homecoming because All-American's Homecoming's drop was, it was scary. It was like one of those things like, I really hope you guys bounce back because in this new era, every view counts. And to slip that far down was shocking, but they are bouncing back.
Mm-hmm.
Professionals, not so much. Professionals is slowly making its way down. it's in Riverdale territory at this point. Which, I mean, it's an acquisition that's not really getting promoted outside of the network. So this is kind of the CW's fault anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, currently, are any of the shows in the 100,000s? Like any like the important ones? Not to be,
No,
No.
not at the moment.
Because I know that was like an issue last season. I feel like Riverdale and Dynasty got a lot of 100,000s, and like that's not what we want because that's very close to like the thousands.
Even over the summer, like the likes of like Devils would have fallen into that territory as well. So I do feel like if you look at what the CW's ratings were in the middle of the summer, outside of Stargirl, everything was doing the same, which were the low 200s, 100,000s. There is a clear improvement now that fall TV has come back, and that's a great news for the network and hopefully great news for the shows on it. Not exactly where they need to be, but again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. We're not going to get there overnight. Things are doing well at the moment. And I do just want to also shout out All-American Homecoming because even though I haven't been keeping up with the show, I have been keeping up with the ratings, and I'm pretty sure this week's episode was the most watched since in the later half of season 1. So like,
nice.
That's a huge improvement because I'm pretty sure season 1 were in the 300,000s as well. So that's a huge improvement. It didn't just hold its own, it bounced back significantly. So hopefully that will be the trend going forward for not just it, but all of the shows. But right now I just wanted to spotlight that because that was kind of huge.
I think the fandom started rallying when they saw those numbers. People are finding whatever means they can to watch live. And then you have the delayed numbers from streaming. So there's that. I think that if everyone can hold steady as this Nexstar and Verizon dispute happens, we should be in pretty good shape. It's just unfortunate for some shows that started a bit later because they can't balance out in the way that, like, say, Walker Independence. Walker Independence has been steady, and that's wonderful. But like shows like the Winchesters, or which started later, and All-American Homecoming, they just they haven't been able to rest. There's been declines. It's just not. It's maybe everything should have came back the same week. We wouldn't be in this problem. But I mean, I do understand the staggered premieres. It's just they saw this Verizon thing coming. So
yeah, I find that's the hardest thing to judge because at the end of the day, they're all recently premiered shows, but it impacted the Verizon issue impacted the Winchesters and All-American Homecoming a lot sooner than it impacted the likes of Stargirl or Walker. In fact, there are the two shows we don't even think it really impacted at all. But because it happened so soon into the fall season, it makes the comparison impossible, if that makes sense. It's hard. You can't compare a show's week 2 ratings with the Verizon issue in account versus a show's week 3 ratings or week 4 ratings or week 8 ratings in Stargirl's terms when it's had a long enough time to hold its own, build up that audience. So the stagger thing makes it impossible to get a fair judgment because now you see like the likes of the Winchesters bouncing back in week 3, All-American Homecoming bouncing back in week 3, whereas shows like maybe Walker Independence are actually have remained steady the whole time. No bounce back, but they've remained steady the whole time. They didn't suffer in the first place. So there are so many, like, there are always so many variables when it comes in TV comes into account, particularly on a network that suffers from preemptions as much as the CW. But I feel like it's so awful that the Verizon issue got in the way so early, because it makes it hard for us to make a concrete judgment. So I hope the CW doesn't make a concrete judgment this early, because these shows still have life in them, and clearly you can see that from the bounce backs.
Yeah, and I hope they don't shoot themselves in the foot and then blame us. It's like, no,
Yeah,
that was a personal problem.
yeah, because that is my concern about the Winchesters and Walker Independence, because Walker Independence looks steady in comparison, but they would, because like you got in a dispute with Verizon a week after the Winchesters premiered, which means so by the time this pod comes out, we'll be 2 weeks into this dispute.
Mhm.
So they are holding out. We've no idea how long this could last. I was hoping it would only be a few days. It looks like we might even be going into, well, we're definitely going to go into November, it looks like this. But hopefully we're not even going into the holidays like this, like before this, like, are they really going to suffer before they go on their winter hiatuses? Like, it's just, it's not really fair. But the CW hasn't been fair under Next Star's regime. So I guess we should just brace for that.
Yeah, cross your fingers, manifest good things.
Yes, I wish we could manifest a good Halloween lineup, but we can't because it's already been established. So like All American Homecoming will not be on Halloween. Instead, World's Funniest Animals Halloween will air at 8 p.m. and then the 13 Scariest Movies of All Time will air, and that's lackluster.
They couldn't have found an actual scary movie.
Apparently not. Apparently, we're not licensing a thing. We're not going to be doing that. I don't see why we just don't do an entire block of Halloween episodes that the CW has aired.
It's confusing. Like I know there are networks that plan like a full block of, okay, everyone's celebrating Halloween. They just did it on ABC with Abbott Elementary and Home Economics. Granted, Disney has a little bit more money to spend, and they have a bit more of a say in being like, hey, we're celebrating Halloween, so create around that. But I think it's a smart decision to like plan themed lineups that people are like, ooh, I'll hop into a show that looks like it's going to be a spooky good time. And like that's how you can get new viewers. I don't know.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And I feel like, again, not to go down this route on this year, because they're not that connected to Warner Brothers anymore, but Warner Brothers still has a 12% stake. I'm sure they could have made something work. But like, you have access to like Warner Brothers library of movies, cartoons, Halloween episodes, whatever. I'm sure there was something in the library, like or something like the Batman versus Dracula, a classic Halloween movie. You know what I mean? Like they have those things at their disposal. I just feel like when you could make Halloween episodes, when you could distribute Halloween episodes or Halloween movies for anything from some of the classics, Scooby-Doo Halloween special or something like that, it just feels like that lineup is so lackluster. And I like being diplomatic and like saying, maybe their hands were tied or whatever, but no, that lineup is incredibly lackluster.
Or like re-air your new shows. Give people a second opportunity to watch them. I don't know why they haven't done that. That's not related to Halloween. But
I mean, the Winchesters would work on Halloween. So.
Right? Like, do a back-to-back like Winchesters event. I don't know.
Oh, that would be fun, actually. That'd be really fun because you have the premiere and then episode 2 were hippies.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's fun.
Yeah. Or even episode 2 and 3. I don't know.
Oh, yes, because we'll get there, but that was that was spooky.
Yeah, that was a time.
Yes, it was. But I mean, it's for the network to be 16 years old, they have an archive. Just dive into your own library. You have access. You like 2 of the biggest studios ever. Just use their catalog. It's very confusing to me. Like, I just don't understand why you don't take advantage. It was a nepotism baby. Why? It was given everything but the Halloween themed things, and I just don't understand why.
Yeah, they could ask mom and dad for help. Come on. I'm sure Warner Brothers and CBS have something there.
Yes.
Look at her. Like, how much? I mean, granted, we don't know what that costs
True.
Like, but it seems easy. Just put it on.
I know. I mean, not that the WB isn't going through some issues, but just write the check and play the movie. But so since we're on Halloween TV, some top Halloween TV episodes. Of course, we have to start with 90210 as it's due.
Of course. I don't know if I mentioned this episode in our 90210 special. But in season 2, the episode Unmasked is like a Halloween themed episode. It's not like especially spooky. Like they're just still in high school going through things, and then they go to the beach club and there's like a costume contest. I don't remember who dressed up as what. There was a Robert Pattinson as Edward Cullen because that was the Twilight days. I don't know if that was anybody in the actual cast, but I've always loved this episode because maybe I did talk about this on the podcast, but there's a scene between Silver and Teddy where she's going through a lot with her family, and she takes him onto the roof of the school to hit tennis balls. And there's the song Sweet Disposition by the Temper Trap. And oh my God, I love that scene so much. And it just happens to be in the Halloween episode. So I love it. That's not a Halloween episode that I like rewatch like for Halloween, because it doesn't, it's, I don't know. It's like not the kind of like, oh, like a Halloween Town. Like I have to watch that every year. But whenever I do watch it, I'm like, oh, this is just chef's kiss, like the golden era of television. But one that I do watch probably like every other year is, and it's not even a Halloween episode, of Dawson's Creek in season 5. I think the episode aired in December. So that's how random the show was. They just did like random like horror episodes because it was created by Kevin Williamson, who I believe wrote Scream and did other horror things. But the episode is called 4 Scary Stories, and it's just like vignettes of the characters just like sitting in a room and telling scary stories of like things that have happened to them. And it is truly one of the most chilling episodes of television I've ever seen for just like a teen drama. There's one where like Joey is being chased through the 4th floor of her college library, and it's really scary. And then there's Pacey's story is like he's on a date, and then he gets chased by this car, and when the car stops, they get out and there's nobody in the car.
Oh wow! Oh my!
I know, it's just so. There's 2 more, and oh my God, it's so scary. But I remember watching that episode as a kid on TBS when it was in syndication. But now I just love watching it every year because it's like a little condensed horror movie in 4 parts.
That's cool. I'm assuming it's better than that, like those, what was it, 3 vignettes from the Riverdale's first season where they're like on the road together. They were doing like a triptych or something, and I remember thinking like we could have workshopped it more. It could have been better. I think the best version though was the Night Gallery, for all those horror stories. That was a wonderful episode of Riverdale where we got to see like the Rat King and Archie being haunted by what happened in the war, and then Betty's whole Hephaestus moment, like she's like the god of the workshop, and she's like chainsawing a man down. Like,
what was that episode in season 2 where she goes to that house alone at night to talk to the Black Hood? Do you guys remember that episode?
Oh man, yes.
That was like a
terrifying.
really good episode, and it was so scary.
I feel like Riverdale had so many like Halloween-like episodes that it's hard to remember if they were actually Halloween themed. It's one of those shows that have like such an like eerie quality. It lends itself to the tone of Halloween so well that even if they did in storybook or like storyline a Halloween episode, if it aired during Halloween, it would go down in history as a great Halloween episode. And why didn't we have something like that on this year? That would have been awesome.
It would have been. They have so many, like you have so many shows to choose from. Like recent CW shows, past CW shows. There's so much in the catalog. I'm sorry, I'm always going to be sad about it. Like until they get it together. I mean, The Flash even has one. I forget the name of the villain, but he's played by a contortionist. Oh yes, it's he's like got this mask and he's like really red dreads, and he can fit himself into boxes, and he's sort of got like the bone structure of a rat where they're able to squeeze through holes the size of a quarter. As long as it's the size of the quarter, they can get through it, and the same thing can happen with this villain.
Ragdoll, I believe that's what he was called.
Yes,
Every
Ragdoll.
time
He's
you
so
guys
creepy.
tell me something about the Flash, I never see it coming.
That's what the show has become.
Yes, and the promo for it was so great because it starts. I remember I have to be home tonight. I have to watch it because it starts where I think it's just Barry in his house, and Ragdoll's in a Christmas box, right? It's a present, and Barry's just going to like the fridge, and he swears he hears something, and he does. It's Ragdoll slowly coming out of the box. It's very creepy. They did very excellent with that episode.
Yeah, it's so good because like at the end of the day, that villain can't be that powerful against the Flash because at the end of the day, you move at super speed. Very few people can hold anything against you. But because he was so terrifying, it made Barry stop for a couple of minutes. It just, I feel like they used the tone, the Halloween tone, everything. I don't even know if you would really call it like a traditionally Halloween episode, but just like Riverdale, that's one of them shows that really lends itself to that if you have a spooky villain, you know how to use it and direct it. It lives forever as one of the show's most intense episodes. And Ragdoll is such a great villain. And even though they didn't use him that much, I don't think any of his appearances really lived up to that first one because he really relied so heavily on tone and atmosphere and the way it was shot. And of course, the way you would see the limbs coming out of the box and he would spin around and his head would turn around at times as well. It was terrifying, but epically done at the same time. Like you have to commend it. It was really, really good.
I'm going to need some YouTube clips.
Yes. Is this, Michael, was that his, when, not Candace, Iris. When Iris jumps off the roof to save Barry, is that same episode?
I'm pretty sure that was his first episode. I think that was it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because there's a moment where like she's trying to help Barry. Barry's been tied to a chair, and Ragdoll pushes him off the side of a building. And Iris, powerless, she jumps off the building to go save her husband. And she does like a whole skydiving move so she can make herself like more aerodynamic, and she saves him. It doesn't quite make sense about how he got out of the chair, but it doesn't matter because it's a cool scene. It's a cool scene.
Didn't she have? He was wearing medicuffs, I think, and she had the key or something, and both of them admit her or trying to stick the key into the medicuffs, and then he was able to speed her down. But yeah, what a moment.
It was a great moment. And I was like, if she had dropped the key, it was over for both of y'all, but that's love. But like, so the Arrowverse also had another one. There's Stargirl's Halloween episode.
Yeah, I really liked Stargirl's Halloween episode because it wasn't really a Halloween episode and it wasn't really a villain-centric episode either. It just happened to be set at Halloween. And as we know with shows about teenagers in high schools and everything, that can really work well for the atmosphere. I remember the episode was right around the time they were recruiting Hourman. I think it was the 5th episode of the first season. So it was still technically a DC Universe show at this point. And they were recruiting Hourman. And I can't remember if they went into the party dressed up or anything, but nobody would have noticed they were dressed up because it was a Halloween party. And it was right around the time when we didn't know Cindy was Dragon King's daughter. All we thought she was just the rich girl with that was so mean. And she was like, "What are you doing here, new girl?" And like they really just relied on atmosphere because there would be people walking around in big werewolf masks and scaring people all the time. One character would be talking to someone who they thought was someone because they had the same mask on, and then it would turn out it wasn't. I just remember thinking it was such a unique kind of Halloween episode because like, for the Flash, for example, it really relied on terror and everything, and Stargirl didn't do any of that. It just happened to be set at Halloween. But like when they were recruiting Hourman, they'd be out on like that a dark highway by a tree after a car crash, and it would be totally dark, and yet the staff would be the only source of light. And for Stargirl being such a like inherently bright show, it was quite a dark visually episode, and I think that really lent itself nicely. I don't know whether they planned on it or in around Halloween time. It did, but I love that. I thought it was class. And again, Stargirl is one of those shows that really lends itself to the whole tone. I said before, there's something eerie about Stargirl because of how whimsical it is. I know when we talked about it being like a Disney movie, we said something similar. It's kind of got like a Scooby-Doo like quality to it, and that really came off in that episode. And it was such a great atmosphere. One Halloween episode that just came to mind that I forgot to talk about is the WandaVision Halloween Spooktacular episode. When they all dressed up, and Wanda, of course, dressed up as the Scarlet Witch before we knew she was the Scarlet Witch, and Vision dressed up like his old Vision episode or Vision costume. I just think of all the WandaVision episodes. That's the one that kind of stayed with me. I know it's not a CW show, but I just feel like if you're going to do a Halloween episode, bend towards all of the great Halloween tropes, you say, and I think that episode had all of them. It was such a great atmospheric treat. But yeah, even something like that, again, I know it's Disney, but if you heard something fun, like a sitcom Halloween episode on the CW lineup at Halloween, I think that'd be just so much more original than what they've got right now.
Yeah, so if you don't want to watch World's Funniest Animals or whatever the other thing was, we've given you a solid watch list.
There's just so much to choose from. The WandaVision one is good. I have one more before we move on,
Sure.
and because I just remembered it. It's 911. And I don't know if that was a Halloween episode, but it was it's supposed to be Halloween-esque. It's the Valentine's Day episode that ends up being a horror. And it's so great because you have like I think Abby and Buck are on their first date, and he ends up choking on some food he's never choked at all in the show. This is the first time he does, and she has to do she has to trach him in order to get him air. And then you have Athena, who goes to go check up on a young lady she thought was having a rough Halloween with her boyfriend. Turns out her boyfriend was having a rough Halloween with her. She super glued this man.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Oh man.
Yeah, she found out that he had another date. And so she decided to chop him up. And she's got like a bunch of different mental health issues. And so when like Athena comes to see her, she thinks she's just helping this young girl out, but she circles back because she realizes something's wrong. And she finds this man. He was on her craft table, and she had glued his parts back together. And she's like, "Don't touch him. He's setting. Once I fix him, he'll be all right. And all he needs is a new heart." And she wants to take Athena's heart. And I was like, this is the worst Valentine's Day ever for all the characters involved.
911 is just like so committed to being out there.
Yes. It's a great episode though. So yes, we have a full lineup of episodes you could watch on streaming services if you can find them, or DVDs if you own them. And enjoy yourself, because CW is not providing you with the content that you need on Halloween, unless of course you tune into the Winchesters and watch stream episode 3, because that was a time. I don't want to look up burlap sacks ever again.
New Fear Unlocked. I love this episode though, which I know we were kind of lukewarm on episode 2. But there were so many moments in this episode that I really, 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 really loved.
A lot. So should we start with the Jon and Mary of it all, or should we stay in the horror part of it and then come back to Jon and Mary?
Well, let's end with Jon and Mary, because I have a lot to say.
Okay.
Well, like, I mean, this episode, funnily enough, we were just talking about it, reminded me of the Ragdoll episode of The Flash. Very, very creepy, very kind of body horror, very focused on, is it a demon? I don't know. Very, very much focused on that. And it also, I say this fondly, it reminded me of some of Supernatural's best episodes, because it made you want to look away, but unable to look away. And I feel like if it accomplished that, it nailed that. And first, like, again, if I didn't make it clear, the monster was terrifying.
The hands coming out of that bag the first time that you see them. Now, when that baby turned around and she was like, "Bernice," and I was like, "Honey, you don't know where that bag has been. Does that look like the bag that you owned? Why are we sticking our hands in it?"
Oh, it was like, I feel like a lot of shows that we watch lately have been going into like their version of the Upside Down.
Oh yeah.
And this was like really, really scary, because the stakes were so high. Like, if they didn't get out of that bag, they were staying in the bag, and that's not the bag you want to be in.
Like, and even if you, like, because you had to, what did they say? If you destroy the creature, but they're not out of the bag, then they're destroyed too. It's like his little pocket world goes away, and that's the end of their existence.
Yeah.
I love how Mary was so, like, she has no other option. Like
Mhm.
she's always going to be brave. She's always going to be like, I'm going to deal with this now, and then you guys figure it out. Like that's always her vibe, and that's not me. Can't relate. So I love watching it, and I commend her. And Meg was so good too.
Mhm.
She was.
She's so committed to it because I feel like you really get Mirai, just that she's so headstrong from her. And I know a lot of people say, is that bravery or is it stupidity running in without a fully formed plan? But I think it was bravery in this case because
Michael, are you quoting Nancy Drew?
I'm not. I don't know what you're talking about. But
we'll get to that one in a couple minutes.
We will. Foreshadowing on my part. But John did not trust himself. John is still struggling with whether he is cut out for the hunter lifestyle. And yet Mary threw him right in at the deep end with a situation where he had to be the one to figure it out. Of course, not to take away from Lata, who was like the MVP of this episode, but John had to do a lot of thinking on his feet and come up with ideas. And then he was the one who thought about communicating with her on the walkie-talkie. He really came through when he had to. And I feel like it was Mary's kind of headstrong, I'm going to rush in and save the day, that forced him to do that. And again, there's a second layer of that conversation, which comes back to their whole relationship, which we'll talk about later. But I just feel like, again, for being such a like villain of the week episode, huge character moments for both of them.
It was, and I think she's someone she's a force of nature anyway, and she was going to run headlong into danger. But also, specifically, this is about kids, and not just kids who she doesn't know. These are kids she takes care of. She knows them. Like there's a lot of stakes for her in this, and so because compared to them, compared to the children, they're grown. She's thinking about these kids stuck in this sack with this monster. And so she wants to be able to help them. She doesn't matter at that point in her mind. They do. And I thought that was a lovely display of who she is as a character, how fiercely protective she is. And especially, I know we're supposed to get on to John and Mary later, but I do have to say one thing about when they were in, it's Carrie, little girl's name is Carrie, right? Carrie's room. I felt for Mary when she said there was no room for her to dream.
My goodness.
You could only be a hunter.
I think it was so powerful for such an early on scene. I know they had another one later on, but like that one stayed with me. And I mean, like, I think that was kind of like the thing we needed to think about when all this horror stuff was going on in the background. And I love that the room channels so much emotion, because that was where the source of the monster originated from in this case. And it brought so much back, because like, I'm sure Mary wasn't that familiar with childhood bedrooms or whatever when she was brought into this hunter's lifestyle. And again, I know I'll get into it. I'm getting pulled into this conversation, but
let's just get into the John and Mary.
Let's do it.
We're here.
But he had such a like life longing for his father, looking for his father because he loved his father, because of the life they lived before he knew everything. Whereas Mary never really had that. She's very much searching for her father now, but she never had that life where she could have been something else, where when her dad came home from the hunting, he was someone else. He was something else. He was a family man. She was just part of the business right to begin with, whereas John didn't have that. And I think that's such a beautiful juxtaposition between the two of them. And it's kind of pulling them closer together, because he was the one who made her confront that in the end. And she did in the end, and it came through. But yeah, just again, I find it hard to move past that scene because it came so early in the episode. And I think that was just such a wonderful scene.
And it's so early in the series too. That was something that I was thinking about when John was jumping ahead to like the climax. When John was saying to Lata, I can't lose her. I was like, okay, we're getting there quick. Like for a second, well, obviously it tore my heart out, and I'm still thinking about it. Like I haven't stopped thinking about the single tear. But I was like, is this too soon for him to have these stakes? We know he's like head over heels in love with her, even if neither of them can communicate that yet. I don't think they've realized, but that connection is there. But I was like, is this too soon? And then I was like, no, I don't care. I want to see it. So let's get to it. And I'm sure as the series goes on, and hopefully there's a very long run in this future, those stakes will only grow the deeper their connection gets and the more they are put in danger. Like, I have faith that the storytelling can outlast this one scene, but I think it was a beautiful moment to show just how deep their connection is already and how much he understands her and how much, like, even if he understands her, but he doesn't understand why their connection is so strong. And but all he knows is like, this can't end right now. Like, she
Yeah,
needs to come back.
I think for me, it was too early until we got the scene at the end with him and Betty when she gives him the ring back. And I'm like, Jon is someone who wants partnership.
And
he falls easily because of that.
Yeah, and he goes quick. He follows his heart. At least this Jon. Like, I hope everybody knows, like, Sabrina and I don't have the knowledge of like older Jon, so we're going with what's in the material here. So this Jon is very much like, I'm in love, I'm all in, based on him proposing to Betty as whatever. That's what I took away from that.
I did too. I think it is because I love how sort of Betty wants to be a friend, but also you could tell she had been uncomfortable with how fast he had been moving, and he agrees that she made the right decision not to say yes. But it is interesting that I wonder if some of this has to do with being raised by a single mom who got left by his dad, wanting to have partnership with someone, wanting to be able to work with someone. And in Jon's mind, Mary's the key to all of that. And they're both giving each other things that they need. I love that he gives her space, has her give her own self space to dream, to envision a life outside of a hunter. And I love how visually the hat that she's wearing, that was her dad's, you can tell that he's her hero. She does not want to disappoint Samuel, and leaving hunting would disappoint Samuel, which is why she could not let go of it at first. And I think one of the things that the first half of this season seems to be doing is allowing these kids to find their own paths outside of what their parents want for them.
Yeah, and it's so layered as well, because Mary clearly wants that life outside of hunting, but at the same time, she's afraid of disappointing her dad, or she doesn't want. I don't know if she's fully accepted the idea that there could be a life afterwards. But what really makes the story interesting is that I think it's Jon that's helping her see that. And I do think she's very much connected to him yet, even though she doesn't realize it yet. But he is so excitable about hunting and wants to be the best hunter in the world and learn to impress his father. So it's an interesting conflict, because the very person who's making her realize that there is a life after hunting is also the very person who wants to do it for the rest of his life. So you know what I mean? Like, it's all the dynamics here as far as hunting goes is so like deep. But also, I agree. I was wondering, or is it too early for us to get this connected? But then they went and did the typical thing by introducing a new obstacle into the mix right at the end, which is this man she met at the movie theater.
Oh my God.
I don't trust him.
No. And it broke me a little bit, because you saw how like puppy dog Jon was like, oh, let's go to the movies together at the start. And then she went not only on her own, but then met someone else there. And I'm like, oh, this is going to break him. Even if he's not aware of how connected he is to her yet, he will be when he finds out that she went with someone else. And I don't think this is too important to just be he's never going to show up again. I assume this character is going to have something of a role going forward. And it'll definitely spice things up. I feel like the iconic Jon at Mary dynamic that we were seeing right out of the gate might end up taking a back seat for a little while, as this obstacle, whoever he may be, and no doubt there's more to him than that, plays a role in the next few episodes, if he's in the next few episodes. But yeah, it's very exciting, because they shocked us by going there so quickly, and now they've pulled back. So where do we go from here?
Is he connected to I don't know what the character's name is, Bridget Reagan's?
Rock and Roxy?
Yeah.
I wonder.
He may be. It is very strange. I mean, how it's framed, how he just pops up at the theater, and he's going to go see the exact same movie that she's going to go see, while one of the creatures is going to go
in that moment.
She was
opening herself up to being like, I'm going to take the night off. And he just slides in, and she's like, oh, fun. And I'm like, Mary.
That's when Jon opened that door, though. Why isn't Jon here?
Yeah. I was like, okay, fair enough. Look at him getting rid of the big burlap sack and burning it. good on you, John, but like, couldn't you have done that and went to the movie theater with her? It was your idea after all. Yeah, but I wonder, it has to be tied to more than that. Of course, it was a sweet moment. If you weren't shipping John and Mary, it was a sweet moment that she went and met someone outside the theater, and it could lead to more. But like with the type of show that says that you know what the end game is, that ain't gonna happen. There has to be more layers to the story, and I do wonder if it's down to Rock and Roxy. And can I just say, we went from wannabe Poison Ivy last week to real Poison Ivy this week. So great to see Bridget back on screen. Whatever. I assume she's the leader of the Acquitted that they're talking about, because they said it inhabited a woman's body, and Rock and Roxy is now starting to spread demonic music over the airwaves. So I assume that's who she is, and those creatures that come around with her. There's such a great atmosphere around that character, and this is only the first time you've seen her face. I really can't wait to see what kind of role she plays going forward.
Oh, she always slays a villain.
Oh, without a
doubt. She does, and she looked different too. They gave her like a fringe, and she looked really cool. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna love to hate you. Like you're gonna be like a great villain." But I think this episode had everything. It has cuteness, it has softness, it has a bit of mystery, because you have Lata lying about her parents being dead, because apparently her mom is alive. So that's interesting. And then we have Ada torturing the bonsai demon tree with Carlos watching. Like, I love that he had like a qualm, like he was like, wait, but you told him he was gonna be free. It was interesting that Carlos was like, but you weren't honest. And Ada was like, he's a demon. He's going in the tree.
I was on Ada's side. I was like, girl, you do it.
And then she's like, she was cutting the bonsai, but now she's like ripping branches off. I was like, can the demon feel that? What are you doing, Ada?
Oh, there's a dark side to it, and I can't wait to see it explored more. And we might just need it, considering how like terrifying the Acquitted are going to be. And I feel like they're very much giving Ada her own arcs right now, and it's cool that they got Carlos in on it. But I would like, as the show goes on, to see how she kind of interacts with all the characters, because they've created this whole like Scooby Gang dynamic already, and it doesn't feel like she's really part of it. So I feel like maybe is she going to be their secret weapon going forward? I can't wait to see more of her and not isolated from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, I think she's going to chafe under Mary's leadership, though, because there's a split-second scene where she was annoyed when Mary gave her yet another directive.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. I mean, this episode had everything, even had emotional manipulation by giving us a slightly feral, well, no, he was pretty feral, a feral John, but he's like a crying one. So it's going to be interesting if he starts fighting over.
Melted my heart. I'm a John Winchester, Drake Rogers stan. We've known this since before the premiere. But this episode just tore my heart out. I loved it so much. Yeah, there's just the looks between John and Mary and Drake and Meg. It's like I'm lapping it up, eating it with a spoon. I love seeing the breadth of who he is. Like he was an adorable, awkward, just puppy around Betty, because he was like, I don't want Mary to see this. But of course Mary clocks it, because she's our Nancy. She's always filing things away. But I don't think she cares that much, or like she didn't put that much stock into it. She was just like, something's going on, but you handle it, it's fine. But I don't know, I just love how much they trust each other so much.
Yeah,
like she trusted him to find her.
Yeah,
you guys, that was, they were wrong for that. They were right for it, but I was like, how are you going to do that to me?
It's those big things, and it's the small things too. It's like the way that he calls her his friend. There's something deeper behind the way that he says friend, and that's down to Drake's delivery. But I'm just like, you say friend the same way you would say girlfriend, and I really enjoy that about John. I know Mary sees it. I do wonder if the new guy, if he's not a part of the Acquitted, whether or not he's a path to a normal life. And that's what they're gonna do, like juxtapose relationships with. She has this really strong connection with John in the field, and they're getting really close. And then I don't even know that man's name, but like she movie theater guy, they have a connection too, and it's normal, and he doesn't know anything about her monster hunting life. And I'm just like, it's gonna be John, obviously, but this road to Mary and John is going to be very interesting.
They came for us with the content this week and they attacked us, and we loved every last minute of it. What a comeback.
Yeah, yes. Can't wait for episode 4. I cannot believe we're already on episode 4. It's gonna be a month. Wow. Okay, but what happened at next? Not is it even close? Where is Blue Valley again? Is it south?
Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Nebraska? Wow.
I don't know anything about geography, so I'll say Nebraska and you guys will work with it. So this was week part 2 of in the Infinity Inc. saga. Remember last week it took a break and brought Green Lantern's daughter back into the fray. She wanted to find her brother, and he has the power of darkness just like the Shed. And when he kind of like exploded into shadows, Pat and the Shed kind of tried to protect Courtney and Jenny from the blast, and it ended up sending the two of them into the Shadowlands. So this was very much a tale of two halves, but it was very much done to wrap up the Infinity Inc. saga. And so we know Mr. Bones is running the Helix Academy. And we also thought Mr. Bones was the person watching everyone in Blue Valley on the cameras, because every time you seen the cameras, there was a gloved hand, what looked like a cuff of a blazer or a suit jacket, and they were doing a jigsaw with a skull on it. So everyone's like, clearly it's Mr. Bones. No, this week we find out that it actually wasn't Mr. Bones watching them. Mr. Bones is exactly what he says on the tin. He is running the Helix Academy, and the only thing remotely shady about him is that the Helix Academy takes in youths with superpowers who have to be isolated from the rest of the world. But he does look after them, he does protect them, he does love them. But he said to Courtney, the difference with you and your friends is you can put down the staff, you can take off the mask, you can take off the Green Lantern ring. The problem with us and Green Lantern's daughter's brother, I'm going to call him Todd going forward, Todd, is that he is his power. He doesn't possess his power. He can't turn it off. He is his power. Just like Mr. Bones is a walking skeleton, his skin is translucent, so you can see the skull through his face. He also has a cyanide touch, which means if he takes off his gloves and touches a plant, it dies. He touches anything, it dies. So there's no getting away from their power. So basically, Mr. Bones was trying to say that Todd should stay with them, because they said Green Lantern's daughter might accidentally burn down a building with her ring, but Todd could literally destroy the world, so he has to stay with us so we can suppress his power. And then Courtney talked him round and said, people should not be hiding from the world for being different. They deserve to be part of the world, and you're trying to keep him away from his sister, when I think the love his sister has for him is the very thing that could curb that power. Just like Courtney's staff brings out the best in her, the Green Lantern ring could bring out the best in her brother. And they did that, and they managed to make it work, and Jenny and her brother reunited after all this time, and the shadows stopped. Meanwhile, over on the other dimension, Pat and the Shed were trying to break out, and the Shed thought that because the Shadowlands make sure you see the worst parts of yourself or your worst fears. So Pat was seeing his father telling him that he was always a disappointment. He was seeing his son Mike telling him that because you brought Courtney in, you've loved Barbara and Courtney. I feel left out. I feel as left out as you did as a child. So Pat was seeing the worst about himself, but also what the Shed didn't expect was that he would see the worst about himself as well, which is basically in the 1800s, his sister died and he wasn't there because he tried to remove all of the connections from his life because he thought connections made people weak. So he had to deal with that and cope with that. So the Pat and the Shed kind of ended up bonding over their weaknesses, and they helped each other survive in the Shadowlands. But the good news is that when Jenny and her brother Todd worked out their differences and came back together, the darkness that was in Jenny's ring, Green Lantern ring, she gave it back to Todd, and that made him whole again. And that unwound the awkwardness. Remember last week I said the Shed and Green Lantern's daughter's ring, they were interwoven, and that was making neither of their powers were working right. Because she did that, the Shed got his power back fully. They were free from the Shadowlands, and the Green Lantern's light and the Shed's darkness were no longer interwoven. But right as the episode was about to end, Pat was like, Shed, you want to redeem yourself from all your darkness, but that's not just not doing bad things. You also need to do some good as well. So he convinced Todd Obsidian that he could teach him how to use the power of the shadows. So they've gone off and done their own thing. Jenny's decided to join them. So they're away off to New York City, and the Shade is now going to teach them. He's going to be a good person. He's going to be a teacher. And I hope we see him again, because I adore the Shade. He is such a unique character. And I feel like maybe they'll be back for the finale, because he honestly couldn't care less what's going on in Blue Valley. He just wanted his powers fixed, and now they are, but he's going to do some good with it. But basically on the way back to Blue Valley, you can see Pat is still a little broken by what happened in the Shadowlands. He's not his usual quirky self. And Courtney's talking about how they're going to save Blue Valley and they're going to find out who's behind the cameras. But Pat really couldn't care less at this point, because I think he's kind of been broken by everything that happened in the Shadowlands. And the big, most exciting thing from the episode is Courtney was like, if Mr. Bones and the Helix Academy weren't watching us, who was? And it cut back to the room with all the cameras in it. As this was all happening, everyone in Blue Valley destroyed the cameras. There are no cameras left, so the person watching them can't see what's happening in Blue Valley anymore. And you saw the gloved hand get very angry. It zoomed up over the blazer, and we saw that this was actually a hooded figure. And when it seen that all of the cameras were gone, it punched a hole through the TV screens and walked off in a strut. So we don't know who it is. Me, with all my DC knowledge, knows nothing about who this character is.
Cindy.
We didn't see Cindy this week. But yeah, that's it. The Infinity Inc. saga is over now. I feel like this was designed. Mr. Bones also said maybe they were right in the end. Maybe these people deserve to be seen by the world. And because he had such a close-up interaction with the Justice Society of America, he was like, maybe it's time we start our own team. So I feel like Mr. Bones is going to use all the kids staying at the Helix Academy and form his own basically X-Men, where he has all these kids with superpowers. And then meanwhile, I think Jenny and Todd are going to form their own little Infinity Inc. kind of unit, where they're being taught by the Shed. So, but of course, the big story is who is watching them in Blue Valley. It's not Mr. Bones. Who is and who killed the gambler? Because now we're none the wiser again. The big running theory, since Mr. Bones was the tagline from last season, he was the kind of tag at the end credits. Everyone was like, Mr. Bones is coming to season 3. Turns out Mr. Bones isn't as bad as people thought. So now we don't know. It wasn't Cindy. It wasn't the Crocs. It wasn't Dragon King. And now we know it wasn't Mr. Bones. Who is killing people in Blue Valley, who attacked Starman, and who is watching them, was watching them. Before I wrap up, the teaser for next week shows that Courtney learned a lot during her trip to the Helix Academy and wants to tell Cameron the truth about everything. So she wants to tell him all about his father, and that she is Stargirl, and that his father was a villain. But I think I told you before that Rec, our man, does not like Cameron. The two of them have clashed before, and then Cameron used his ice powers to burst Rick's car tires. So the two of them do not like each other. And now Rick is like jacked up on full-time hourglass, which we think is going to create an addiction problem. The promo for next week shows that Rick starts destroying Cameron's house. So I assume that spoils it, and that Cameron does find out about Stargirl and the JSA, but Rick's off doing his own thing, destroying the mansion. And the grandparents get in on the action, shooting their ice powers at next week as well. So I feel like this is kind of like the moment in the season we were all waiting for. Still no Cindy sighting yet, but as far as the Cameron saga goes, I think it's just about to kick off next week.
You're not gonna get to tell him. It's gonna come out and it's gonna be horrible, and I'm gonna feel so bad for Courtney.
The way that you describe this episode, though, it seems like the storytelling and the writing was very smart, and like there was some metaphors and symbolism going on, which is always my favorite kind of storytelling in genre. I know I love that in Buffy, when it was like everything was a metaphor for like being a teenager's hell, and Buffy has to literally fight monsters. But the way that you describe certain things, I was like, oh, I see what they're getting at. If you look a little deeper, it's not just people trying to deal with these things. It goes a little deeper, which I like.
I think that's where Stargirl thrives, because everyone talks about how Courtney's a source of light, and we were literally talking about a storyline here that involved literal lightness and literal darkness, and it turned into a metaphor about how these people who have been shielded by the Helix Academy don't deserve to be hidden away in the dark. They need to be pulled out into the light to be embraced by the world, and it took someone like the almighty Stargirl to do that. I think the show traffics, or like it thrives as far as like a emotional metaphor goes, and I think that's where its strongest suit is. A lot of these shows use that format on an episodic basis. Stargirl finds a way to drag it out over the whole season. And I think that's where the higher quality, streaming quality television comes from. Because again, I keep saying this, it was a streaming show to begin with. And that was only for a two-parter. I can't wait to see how those arcs play into the rest of the season, because these last two episodes have been very much like a little island on their own. We're back to the main story now. We've 6 episodes left, maybe 7, 6, sorting out who killed the gambler, who's been watching everyone in Blue Valley. And again, we still don't know how Cameron or the Icicle Junior powers play into the storyline at all. And then, of course, I assume Cindy will be back by the end of it. So there's a lot of like fighting, the light fighting darkness, but it's more than the literal power of the cosmic staff versus the power of the shadows. There's real like important like metaphorical meanings below that. And again, I just love Stargirl so much. I can't wait till next week. But more than that, it's at its best right now, and I just hope it keeps going and gets that 4th season it deserves.
Yes, renew Stargirl, CW, and also potentially give them a spin-off with the Helix Academy.
I would love
that's
that.
What it sounds like.
The fans go nuts every time those characters pop up. We love Green Lantern's daughter, and I would love to see her more than the average like 2 to 3 episodes a season.
Make it happen.
Manifesting that.
Yes. But speaking of great television, we do have to tell you guys that our Windy screeners are up, which means that our Walker Independence reviews are going to be later than you're used to. So they will no longer be dropping after a new episode airs. You're going to be waiting for like the week after an episode airs, unfortunately, because the CW does not release weekly episodes for screeners, unlike other networks. So hopefully in the years to come, they'll change that. But for now, that is not the case. And we are going to be watching on the night with you guys on Thursdays instead of dropping a premiere, which is unfortunate. But I mean, the episode is always good. So we just have to wait to tell you our thoughts on it.
We're watching it with the Walker fan.
Yes. But moving on to more great CW television, there's Nancy Drew, episode 15. Nancy is going through it. She's always going through it, but she was really going through it this episode.
I mean,
so are we.
Right. It says it better than anything I could. I mean, come on, like, yes, the season finale is in sight, but the show has been doing this for the last who knows how many episodes. Off the back of last week, you were like, they couldn't possibly make us feel any worse or better. I don't know. How does Nancy Drew make us feel? Both. And it did it all again in one episode. I do, before we get into the whole seriousness of it, I feel like we go over this every week. I just want to talk about what a palate cleanser Ace was, because yet again in that first scene when they all like group together in the claw, bright as when they figure out we're going to do this and you're going to do that and how are we going to solve this, again Ace just comes along with the lighthearted commentary. And when they were talking about like the demonic Aglaeca, and Ace is like, oh yeah, that's not real, I asked her for a PS3 and she didn't get it for me. And I was like,
it was so funny. He was like, I asked her for a PS3. I didn't get the PS3, but I asked for it.
He just reiterated that. Like, again, that just summed him up. I know a very dark episode, you need that kind of levity, but like, I love the fact that we can now rely on the first scene where they're talking about something so dark and terrifying, and he comes along with the lighthearted content every time. I live for those scenes, and like, it always starts the episode on a high for me.
Yes, and he was so game to really help Nancy. I mean, he always is. But there's just something about the way the two of them sort of interact with one another that's really nice. I know we're always on Nace Watch. Nace Watch is not going anywhere. But like, I feel like this was also it was a Drew Crew heavy episode, and that was really nice. Everyone had their own moving parts, including Owen, who I know they're still trying to sell us on him, and I'm still not buying it. I'm so sorry, sir, but something's not right.
I'm in a bit of it.
Calling them Noan because no.
Hey.
Love it. I'm in a strange spot with them because I know they're not Endgame. I don't want them to be Endgame, and I would like whatever mystery they're holding over us to be finished as soon as possible. But at the same time, I like their scenes together. I don't know what it is. I'm not particularly shipping them, but like when they have those moments, it's like one of those things where you can't really look away. I want to see what happens next. I want to know what the agenda is here. There's so much unsaid between the two of them, and I really am eager to find out what it all is. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't like them, but I like watching the scenes, if that makes sense.
It does, because
it's fine.
they're, I think if I wasn't waiting for the shoe to drop, I think I'd find them sweet. He clearly does care a lot about her. I don't know why though. I'm like, he just seemed very invested off the bat. And that could have just been because he was attracted to her. It just feels, there's something that Owen is not saying that keeps coming up in some capacity in the story. Like even when Bess was talking about their ancestor and she makes a comment and then he's like, well, you don't really want to know the rest of those stories. And I was like, are you connected to this ancestor? This is why the sea creature wants you? Because why were you the one in the mirror about to die?
Okay, yeah, let's just fast forward to that when they were asking the Aglaeca for Lucy's bones. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. And he was the toll they had to pay. I was like, oh, that okay, so he's gone. I was like prepared. I was fine with it. I was like, he's gone. But then they saved him. Rewind like 4 seconds when Ace was like, thank you. But yeah, I thought he was a definite goner, and I'm still not convinced that the Aglaeca is not gonna, circle back and be like, I'm finishing this off.
Yeah,
but I thought it was an interesting sorry, I don't mean to step on your thought. But like right after he almost died and he and Nancy hook up, I was like, interesting decisions all around.
Yeah.
It was an interesting decision. The Aglaeca, how do you pronounce that?
Aglaeca, yeah.
Yep.
The Aglaeca, when Nancy's being punished because you could have left the wreath in a wet spot on the kitchen floor. Instead, you made her like pull it out of her throat. That creature is mad.
Oh, is that what that was at the end?
Yeah,
that was the wreath.
Oh, okay. See, I was going to ask you guys what that was because that was one of the most vile things I've ever watched.
Yes, that monster is not happy that her toll was not paid, and I do think it has to connect to the ancestors, the Marvin ancestors, because they were on the boat too, and then the creatures from the boat. I was like, what were y'all doing on your way to this place? Because something's never right in Horseshoe Bay, and somehow it always comes back to the Hudsons and the Marvins.
I feel like the show, we're heading so close towards the finale now. Like the main mystery has to be solved, but now we have this like vengeful spirit that may tie into like the deeper lore of the show. And you're like, will this get solved in however many 3 episodes we have left? 3, right? And however many we have left.
Based on what I know, I think she's sticking around for a hot minute.
I had a feeling, but now I know. It's interesting because, again, there are so many layers to the story, and we were so close to the end of the main one. Speaking of layers, what about Miss Karen and her the poison and Lucy?
Didn't see it coming.
No. I mean,
that was strange. I mean, strange in the sense that like it made more sense for why she latched on to Nancy's book. All right. Alrighty. Like I was like, wait, did you feel the wagon circling? Did you know your time was up? Like, did you know? Because it just seems it's very her whole situation. I was like, you wanted to get revenge for your best friend, but you ended up making up a lot of terrible choices and put a man in jail that you supposedly cared for, who was also the husband of your deceased best friend, and you broke his daughter's heart. As a Karen, the choices were not good. None of them, all around, they were terrible.
Did Karen know that Josh? Oh, wait, no. No one knows who killed Lucy.
No.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
But she knew that. Okay, she knew everything that happened with Josh because she gave Josh the poison to kill Ryan. She assumed Ryan killed Lucy.
Yes. And then she thought that Drew did it. Carson did it. Which is why she put him in jail. So she had no clue who actually did it.
She was just like, I'm gonna take what I can get.
Yes, there was no concrete evidence that she thought there was. So it's interesting how twisted this tale has become. And that doesn't even touch the fact that Josh took himself off the hook and walked out of the garage.
Was there something supernatural related to that? Because the camera did the whole like jolty thing right beforehand, and then he looked like he was walking off like a zombie and disappeared through the door. That there was no door.
It was like a closet.
Yeah. So did something possess him? Like we knew he was dead, and then they're just carrying on totally like oh, there's a serial killer out there, but like nobody walks like that. The camera went wonky and he disappeared into a closet. I assume there's something supernatural at work here. I just don't know why they haven't discussed it yet. I did love the scene when they seen him walk into the closet and the three of them just kind of went like that there. And like, no, Nancy, don't. And she went and looked anyway.
It's great. It was a great moment. I think there's so many. What's interesting to me about Joss's situation, though, is that Lucy doesn't seem to care, and that's her brother.
Right.
Like, she is going about her business. Like, her brother is dead, and she's like, "No, girl, I need you to dig me up. We'll worry about Joss later."
I love this scene too, circling back to Michael's reference when they're investigating the swapped poison and Nancy finds the vial and she's certain that it's water because suddenly she's a scientist and she knew like the curvature of a, I don't know, she was way out of my pay grade. But then Ace drinks it and everyone panics and he's like, see, it's just water. And then his dad was like, what Michael said, I can't decide if that was brave or stupid. And Ace was like, no, it's Nancy. I know that she was right. I trust her, which, speaking my language, Ace.
Yeah. No, it was very much a Nancy and Ace kind of like moment because she was going to do it. And they're like, no, Nancy, we couldn't possibly. And then he went and did it anyway. And of course, then he used Nancy. I thought maybe his father would have caught on something there that he totally trusted Nancy blindly. But again, I feel like this is the long game they're playing. And again, a nice little subtle reference there. Also, I said it a few weeks ago, but I love the relationship between Ace and his dad. I love Ace's dad so much. And the fact that like he oversaw the like taking care of Karen and that Nancy ran up and like begged him to listen to her because they knew Karen was going to get rid of it. He's just become such like, he's only been in like 2 episodes and he just feels like such like heart of the show. And I hope we see so much more of him going forward. I love the bond him and Ace have. And again, like I said, I hope we see more of it going forward.
And they give them such quiet moments, but still very heartfelt. Like when they give you for a reason why for Ace keeps looking through the doorways at his dad. And they're like, you made a promise to me when I was 6. And he was like, yeah, you were 6 years old. Like, this is what
let me live.
Yes. But he does it in such it's still somewhat warm when he says like he understands, but he's just not backing down from what he wants to do. And I also love that his dad respected that Ace can't give his blessing right now. And so he expects that you're going to have to wait for it because it's not happening right now. I thought that was very sweet. And that he listens to these kids. He's not one of the parents who's like, I know what I'm doing. Y'all go and do whatever else you're doing. He gives them a whole room. They're doing their own thing on the chart. Nick apparently knows sign language. How many languages is that? Isn't that the second one?
Nick is talented. That's what we'll say.
Yes. Oh, and there was some fancy this episode too. Which was cute.
Temporarily shacking up.
Yes, he's got the couch. He's couch surfing for now.
The crumbs are being laid.
Wait, so where are we on the status of the mystery? I'm trying to like follow the threads. How close is Nancy to helping her dad? Because her dad's like not convinced that he can get out of this, right?
Right, and she's not anywhere closer than she was previously. Other than that, like they packaged Lucy's bones up and they're going to send them off so they can get examined because was it Ace who was like, yeah, because you want to check to see if the knife's different and or if there's something else up with the bones that doesn't correlate to what they had said happened at the scene. And that would get her father off because if the knife's different and he didn't use that knife, then it has to be somebody else.
I love that scene where it was like he finished her sentence. She had a way of thinking and everybody else was like, Nancy, explain, and Ace just finished the sentence, and the way she said exactly, it was like the two of them are just suddenly after that episode they work together are totally on the same wavelength, and I feel like we'll see some of that going forward. But yeah, as far as the overall mystery goes, I think that the father Carson Drews, I get the name right once, his hearing is on the day, right? And Nancy still has a couple of hours to prove, but then the wreath coming out of her mouth kind of set that off. So I assume the next episode will pick up pretty close after that if they need the other specialist to analyze the bones quickly so that they can prove that that's the miracle she's looking for, if you know what I mean. I assume either they've just dropped that thread, or the next episode will pick up right away on the same day, so that Carson's hearing she can provide him with that miracle. Because it feels like this has kind of become the focus point of the mystery. Of course, it's still playing on in the background, but freeing her father seems to be the priority here, so that he doesn't go back to jail.
Okay. I'm like trying to sort through, and I was like, Tiffany's case is closed-ish, just for killers.
Yes.
We don't know where he is. Okay. I'm trying to keep it all in my head straight, because like I'm resigned to the fact that I'm never really going to fully understand the mythology of the Winchesters, but I'm really trying with Nancy to keep it all like clear in my brain.
Well, I think what also helps with Nancy is that everyone at this point has accepted that this is just what's happening. We have ghosts. Lucy's helping to solve mysteries, even if it does mean making Nancy see hallucinations in which she's like regurgitating teeth that are not her own. Which the body horror was interesting. This episode, they were like, we're not going to give you jump scares. We're going to give you grotesque.
Nancy dropping teeth out of her mouth
in front of other people.
And it was quite interesting because I think they kind of tried to add a little bit of levity every time there was a bit of body horror. Like the first teeth, you heard her voiceover for the first time in a long time. She's like, "Thanks, Lucy," as soon as she spat those teeth out. And then, of course, when they were at the lake and Owen started getting all bloody. Right before that, yes, it was like, "Thank you." I feel like every time there was kind of like a horrifying moment, they added a little bit of levity, but there was no levity at the end when she started regurgitating the wreath, because I feel like this is now the moment they need to take this seriously. And if this is going to be a big overarching presence going forward, it needs to be taken seriously. But yeah, it made for a nice fun episode that they kept trying to balance out the light and the dark, and then in the very end it was like, no, we need to absolutely be on the money here and take this seriously.
But Bess and George too, when Bess was like, "I promise I won't let you get possessed again," and George was like, "Oh, thanks, that's reassuring."
There's so much humor. And also, can we just talk about Ace wanting to name the Horseshoe Bay residence Bagels? Love that. What a moment.
He's so great. I do. One of Nancy Drew's great strengths is the ability to balance the lightness of the characters, especially Ace, with what's going on screen, because it is a very intense series, and this was a very tense episode. And they don't have a big budget, but they always manage to make the things that they want to be creepy. Like even when I'm not going to try to pronounce it again. Once the monster comes through and it's just that black spot that starts coming towards the water, and then she drops the bones right there and then pulls all the way out. I was like, I would never want to live here. Like,
Nope.
No, but great moments, great special effects. They really are. They know how to do what they need to do in order to get the right amount of fear. Like it's low grade fear, but it's enough to like give shivers when
it's
you're
effective.
Very much so. And simple but effective.
Yes, which is okay. This is why let's just hop to, we're gonna do the roast first and then the toast. Because with Nancy having gotten the boot, why has Nancy gotten the boot?
Ask those questions. I mean, like it feels like any old week just talking about an episode now and then having to pivot to that. Again, she's going to get the ending, at least half the ending she deserves, and that's more than a lot of the shows from this season got, and that's a good thing. It's more than Tom Swift got. But like this start of this year, we were talking about the Nancy versus coming, and now here we are in the Nancy versus going the way of the Arrowverse. What happened to this network?
I don't know. But I finished watching the episode that we just talked about, and the first thing I see is that Nancy Drew's ending, and I'm like, can we like get a break?
It feels like we get like a few weeks and they're like, oh, things are wonderful, and then you get this, and it's just like, I mean, in one way I am happy that this news came out while they're still filming season 4, so that they can give a wrap up. And it's not like Roswell, New Mexico and In the Dark, where they got canceled right before their seasons premiered. Like that was very unfair. So now everybody knows going in that the show is going to be done. So I mean, in that sense, it's good that we know this early. But like in another sense, like we could have known earlier then. it just feels very wrong, especially for a show that is this strong. And granted, we haven't seen the other 2 seasons. I feel like we don't really need to, because I feel like, how can you drop off that hard after such a strong season 1? I don't think we've had an episode yet that we did not like, or weren't intrigued by. So it just feels weird to be like, if you're looking for quality, Nancy's it. I know she doesn't have the views, but promo her and she will get the views.
I feel like this show would have been like an awesome like CBS kind of series if it had been given that chance. Again, maybe it being too young of an audience would have made people tune out. But like, it reminds me, it very much has some of the qualities of the classical like murder mysteries. Like, it does remind me of Murder, She Wrote an awful lot, with the seaside town, the police department playing such a big role, the female protagonist that's always right and people continue to doubt them. It very much felt like that. And it just, when shows like that got to thrive in a different generation, it bothers me that when this show was on a network that would have allowed it to thrive, it just unfortunately came at the wrong time, because its run has been cut so short. And like, it may have 4 complete, concise seasons that tells a story from start through finish, but it's not going to be the story that was originally set out. It could have gone on for much longer because of its procedural quality. And like, again, that's, even to talk about what kind of show it is doesn't do justice to what show it is. It's an excellent show. There's so much quality in there. We haven't had an episode yet we didn't enjoy. I have to say, it's one of the best first seasons I've ever watched, and it's not even finished yet. Is like, again, it might be too soon for some people to get attached, but that's not too soon for me to get attached. And I'm already sad that, even though we're luckier than many that we still have all these seasons to go through, it feels like the show was snuffed out when it still had so much more to give.
This is something that I feared. I know before we all decided to watch together, I was like, I think I'm going to start watching Nancy Drew, you guys. And it was before the cancellations. And I was like, but I'm terrified to start it, because I feel like if I start it, I'm going to have bad juju and it's going to get the show canceled. And so we waited until it got renewed and we felt like we were in the clear. And now we start watching it, and don't blame me, Drew Crew. Just, this always happens to me. I don't know what it is, but I still, like, not to be all like glass half empty, but 4 seasons is still a really great run. It's just, I always imagined at least 5 to have like a really strong legacy. I don't know, it just feels like this network, there were a lot of shows that were able to thrive under the radar, like Charmed, Dynasty, In the Dark. Like, these are shows that people, if you weren't watching them, weren't really being talked about a lot, but they were still like building up a lot of seasons, like 4 seasons. But the network kind of just like tossed them all to fend for themselves. And that's not, like, you can't expect a show that you drop on a Friday because you think it has a built-in audience that'll show up for it, or you'll pick it up in streaming. I don't know what it is, but it just, there's something there, and I don't want to call out what I'm really thinking. But a lot of these shows I don't think got a fair shake, because they weren't on the main schedule that they really focus on and promote a little bit more. But I'm still just like, it felt like such a vote of confidence that Nancy was one of the first to get renewed, and it's not like a canceled mid-production, like they're gonna stop it, and it's not like it was airing and it got a chance to prove what season 4 could do ratings wise. So it's just kind of like, it just feels like mixed signals in this era, and I don't know.
And like you said earlier, there needs to be transparency. And honestly, the disparity between what gets promo and what doesn't needs to close. Because it really doesn't make sense that Nancy Drew, a known and beloved property, doesn't have a big audience on the CW. But the reason why it doesn't is because how many people know Nancy Drew even has a new live action series that's been airing for years, especially because it didn't get a part of the Netflix deal. So she ended up on HBO Max. And that, not that CW shows aren't being streamed on HBO Max, they are, but I don't think it's comparable to the numbers that they get in Netflix.
It just seems that, like, for the entirety of its existence, the CW is saved for like the Gossip Girls and the Riverdales, kind of has flown under the radar. Like, it's like they have huge shows, so popular, huge fandoms, but it seems like the The Secret on the broadcast networks, because I was watching recently this is a very long-winded roast for Nancy getting canceled, but I was watching an interview of Jensen Ackles on some primetime show. He was promoting either Big Sky or The Boys or something, and hearing Jimmy Kimmel say the word, "Oh, you were on Supernatural for 15 years." I was like, Jimmy Kimmel knows about Supernatural? Because even though that show's was on for a decade and a half, and like huge fandom, it feels like it was so like insular, like it was the CW fandom's show and not like the world's show. It's like you wouldn't hear these late night shows talking about Supernatural, any of the other CW shows. So it's like, how do you break out of that, of feeling like these shows that are insanely popular worldwide are the underdogs? Something's not clicking.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that, like, do you know about a CW show because the web is talking about it? Like, it should be like online is talking about it and offline as well. Like, knowing about, there are people who didn't know Supernatural had still been aired. They're like, oh, it's still on. I thought it had like went off like years ago, like sometime around when the Vampire Diaries came on or something. And I was like, no, it had 15 seasons. I didn't watch a single one, but it had 15 seasons. And this is due to a lack of promotion.
Without a doubt. I know it's the same situation now with the Flash. I always like when those big accounts on Twitter, I'll not name any of them, tweet the news out in regards to the CW show, because I tend to scroll through the comments to see what people, non-CW fans, think. And like under the Nancy Drew one last night, people were like, wait, Nancy Drew has a show, 4 seasons. I thought the CW was dead. All these things, because the CW, even if it's in the news for sale reasons, people aren't keeping up with it because people aren't aware of it. And again, promotion helps with that. It is so strange that we're living in an era where a show like Stargirl, that is left to fend for itself, is still bringing in one of the biggest audiences on the network, which just highlights that the network is not making the most of that inbuilt fan base. And then you have a show like Nancy, which has probably one of the most vocal online fan bases, isn't translating to views on the night because it needs more than that. Those fans are worldwide. It's like when a really globally popular contestant goes on like a talent show and they still keep ending up in like the bottom 2 because their fans are global. They can't all vote on that competition. It's the exact same here with the CW. Nancy Drew might have a huge fandom worldwide, but they aren't translating to on the night viewers because the CW is not helping promote that show outside of its own US fan base. The fans around the world can't help with that. And I just feel like the network, as it moves into this less international era, is going to have to learn to contend with that and focus on building shows domestically from within and just putting a bit more money behind the promotion budget.
A conundrum.
It is. Or like also promoting when the shows get like awards. So like our toast is about the Saturn Award wins. So Superman and Lois won science fiction series and Brec Bassinger won performance by a younger actor. Like winning awards is huge. Where's the announcements? Where are they?
If Michael hadn't tweeted about it, I don't think I would have known.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, why are we not? You know what I mean? Like, I can't say more than that. Let me just say Stargirl, which airs on the CW on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, stars the Saturn Award winning Brec Bassinger. Put that on your trailers. Just
these are like the biggest awards in their genre, right? Like Saturn Awards is like the award. Yeah,
exactly. And I feel like, first of all, I'm just so happy that of all the shows nominated, they were the 2 that got recognized, because I've said on Twitter, on this podcast, probably to you guys endless amounts of times, these shows are of a higher quality than the kind of TV shows you'd expect on network TV. And I always worry that the fact that they are on network TV on a channel that isn't viewed by as many people, that they consistently get left behind or under the radar. I'm so happy that off them all, Stargirl and Superman and Lois were the 2 that got recognized. And this is at an award ceremony that the likes of Spider-Man No Way Home, The Batman, Miss Marvel and Loki, all those high quality productions, all of them got awards and acknowledgements as well. So I just think that's a huge achievement for the creative teams behind the shows, and of course, most importantly, Brec Bassinger's performance on Stargirl, and just the quality of television you have in both Stargirl and Superman and Lois. Yay them. I hope it's a good sign for them going forward. I hope they maintain that quality, because they are without a doubt 2 of the best shows in this genre, and I hope the CW continues to treat them with respect. By continues to treat them with respect, I mean continues to treat Superman and Lois with respect and starts treating Stargirl with more more respect because it deserves it.
It does. And also, like you said, put the award winning in the trailers and the promos on the key art if you have to. I think it's essential because people don't know what the CW is putting out and the quality of shows that they're putting out. Everyone just remembers the thing that they watched that wasn't great quality, or they remember a show that was on too long that wasn't of great quality. And it's just really like, if you want to build your audience, let people know your stars are winning awards in their genres. Like they didn't, I know there were tweets for when there were nominees for the Critics' Choice Super Awards. And that was it. Like after they did those tweets, that was it. For Brec, I want to see a giant key art somewhere, or on a billboard with her and the fact that she won an award. Superman and Lois should get like bus stop posters where it says that they won awards. Like let the people get their eyes on the shows so that they know when things air. Yes.
Everyone else does it.
I know they don't have to be Emmy award winning. That's not happening. Let's be honest. This is genre. Like genre doesn't really get Emmy awards outside of creative. And
an
it
award's
doesn't.
an award. No one cares.
Exactly. And the fact
at least it's not like something that is like made up, like Teen Choice Awards. No shade, but like
they were selected by a panel, like they weren't voted on. Like this is important. I think there are actual like esteemed people out there making these decisions, and those shows are more than worthy of them. You have streaming quality television on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern time on the CW, and whatever night Superman and Lois chooses to return on. Watch them, love them, and the fans are doing that. But more importantly, CW, promote them, lead with how much people love them, and lead with the award wins.
Toast to Brec, toast to Superman and Lois. And you know what? Toast to Nancy Drew and the Drew crew. We'll be there with you till the very end. Bitter end. We'll be there.
We love y'all. Well done.
Cheers.
We do. Cheers. Yeah, well, that ends this pod episode on a bright note and a sad note, but it is what it is. Happy Halloween to everyone who celebrates. We're the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Bye, y'all.